Welcome to Dementia Formex YouTube channel. Today I'm talking to Fernando Aguzzoli, who is a writer focusing on Alzheimer's. Hello, how are you?
I'm great. Surviving these difficult times here in Brazil. We are living a huge mess here, but I am good with my family. Everyone healthy. So yeah,
That is
good to
lovely to
be here.
hear. Yeah, that's lovely to hear. So please tell me a little bit about yourself and about how you become interested in dementia or Alzheimer's.
Great. So I am 29 years old. I live in the south of Brazil in a city called Porto Alegre. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's the place where I basically grew up and lived basically all my life. I now have 5 books published on Alzheimer's, as you said, incurable diagnosis and death, both for adults and children. That's the interesting part. And I had the opportunity to spend the last year as a fellow for equity in brain health at the Global Brain Health Institute in Trinity College, Dublin. And I am mentioning that because this was probably the most amazing experience, professionally speaking, that I had in the last years because it brought me so many different perspectives on dementia, and I'm very grateful for that. But, well, about my background, I was quite lucky to have an amazing, absolutely amazing grandmother. She was the partner for all my adventures since absolutely always, someone that I could trust, and someone with whom I built the best memories I have of my childhood. But after many visits to several doctors, my grandmother and my best friend at that time, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at the age of 73. And this is when my journey with Alzheimer's began, actually. All I felt at that moment was frustration because how could the person that I love the most be diagnosed with a disease that would not allow me to offer a cure as a family member? Wasn't that my mission after all? That was my question in that beginning. And it was a long journey to accept everything that I couldn't change and thereby face these small and very significant victories of each day. And people often believe, I heard that many times, that a person with dementia, Alzheimer's, or dementia in general doesn't learn or teach absolutely anything else. And that's so not true. I am sure that I learned actually the biggest and most valuable lessons of my life during these 6 years I took care of my friend. And when the disease progressed, I made this decision that surprised my family and my friends. For instance, I decided to drop out of philosophy school and to quit my job to become my grandma's primary caregiver. I wanted to make the most of the time we had left. And looking back there today, I was just a teenager trying to understand all the complexities of a newness that was changing my dynamics, my life, my relations, my family, my house. It was changing everything. But one thing I know we won the disease. And that's how I prefer to see it today. Alzheimer's took my grandma one day when she finally rested. But for 6 long and incredible years, I'm not really good in math, but I think it's about 2000 days, we beat Alzheimer's every single day. And I'm very grateful for all this adventure that we lived.
Hmm. That is a very fascinating story and obviously an enormous undertaking for someone, especially so young. Um, but how did these experiences change your life? How did they form who you are today?
Well, my journey with my grandma changed my life in so many ways, not only personally, but also professionally. Having experienced my grandma's disease on a daily basis made me change many concepts that I had learned, especially with her, such as, for example, the ideas of truth, lie, reality, aging, and even death. Much of what I knew about life came from her lessons, and now she was challenging me. And I remember, for example, my grandma telling me over and over in the past that we must always speak the truth, regardless of the consequences. That's something that I heard from my grandma for all my life. And as Alzheimer's progressed, grandma forgot about her parents' death, her grandparents' death, and she started asking about them more and more frequently. Where's my mom? Where's my grandma? Where's my father? And when I answered that they had died, acknowledging what I knew about truth, what she told me and made me learn, she would cry. She actually cried for hours in a row after realizing that they were dead. And even if 20 minutes later I questioned why she was crying and she was so sad, she would not be able to say it. This happened actually many times. She knew that she was sad. I mean, the feeling was there, but it was so much stronger than the reason itself because she didn't know why she was crying or feeling down. She didn't know the reason. One day, grandma asked me, and of course, this happened many times, but this day in particular, I will never forget. She asked me several times about several people who had already died. And in the end, she told me, you see, it's so hard to forget that they are no longer here. And you insist on reminding me. She was very, very sharp that day, showing me that I was making her experience the loss with the same intensity as the first time. And even worse than that, I was doing that many times a day. So, what should I do? Ignore her? Should I lie to her? Should I insist on telling the truth? I was quite lost. And she wouldn't cry just because, and I hope you will understand that, but not just because she was relieving the loss, but also because she realized that she had forgotten something quite important. We came up with a term for that at my home, something that I use a lot in my lectures today, that is called therapeutic lying. And I try to share a little bit of how to use this practice while preserving the dignity of the person with dementia. So, in my personal sphere, my grandma changed a lot to me. She showed me that life will impose you some challenges and you have to be flexible. You cannot take one idea that you came out with, I don't know, as a teenager and take the same for the whole life. You have to be flexible to change your concepts during life. And in my professional side, grandma actually gave me a professional path. After her death, I released the bestseller that tells our story. The book sold about 300,000 copies in Brazil in the last 5 years. And I was able to travel all over the country, as well as France, Mexico, Spain, and well, United States and other countries to share our adventures with the public. I discovered that passion that I feel in connecting and bonding with families to translate the knowledge of what they are living in the daily basis. And with storytelling, I discovered as a powerful tool to build empathy for healthcare professionals working with dementia. And well, today I have dozens of projects with associations such as International Longevity Center in Brazil, Alzheimer's Association in the US, Alzheimer's Society UK, and other associations. And my biggest goal is, of course, to actually change the reality of families who today experience the same I did years ago. And many times, I think I can resume everything saying that many times it's not about bringing the right answer because we want the right answer. But in many cases, it does not exist actually. But in helping someone to find the most appropriate question, I think that's my work. Show those families that, well, for this particular issue, there is no right answer. There is no things such like that. But there is more appropriate questions, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Right, and it's quite amazing that it has inspired you to write all these books. Could you tell me a little bit more about the books that you have published so far?
Yeah, sure. So my first book is the one that tells our story, tells a little bit of my grandma's life before I was born, and then our connections, why we had such an amazing affective reserve. And this book is quite special for me. I used to say that is my second son. My first one, my daughter was my grandma. I had the opportunity to be her father in the end of her life, and now we have this son together, this book that is helping so many families with her story, and that's quite special for me. But I usually say that my dream world is one where books like mine do not become bestsellers. I once gave an interview to a German journalist, and she asked me, why were people in Brazil so impressed by a young grandson in love with his grandmother? And that's actually the question. Why? Because we live, and I'm sure you feel the same, we live in a society that is becoming more and more distanced by borders, smaller families, people traveling to look for opportunities abroad, and a more active daily life. But we are also getting older as a society in the collective. And countries like Brazil are facing a massive increase in the prevalence of dementia, but we are not prepared to live that. We also are used to see women, usually daughters in middle age, taking on this caregiving role. So all this has contributed to the public's interest, I guess. A young guy that you might see in the shopping mall or maybe queuing for a party, drinking in a pub, talking about the old people's matter, Alzheimer's, that is actually everyone's matter. So that's why I guess the story became so famous in Brazil. And I think that having experienced a disease like Alzheimer's showed me that time was running faster than I anticipated. We know that an accident can take at any moment someone that you love, but a progressive diagnosis with no cure makes us think differently. I wanted to stop the rotation of the earth, sit next to her, and mentally photograph every single movement. I was afraid of what the next day could bring to our life, but I was decided that we together would laugh at everything together. And so we did. But when I left college, well, I told you I'm really bad on math, but some years ago, a lot of years ago, when I left college and work, I decided to create a Facebook page to share our daily life with humor. And no one was doing that 12 years ago, more or less. No one. And soon it was a hit. Everyone was checking our daily life and laughing with us. More than 150,000 families were following us on social media to discover humane and uncomplicated ways to overcome everyday challenges in dementia. No one there was essentially wanting to know about cognitive reserve or biomarkers, but how to deal with aggression and maybe shower time, which is super complicated, we know. These things were essential, and we did it everything with a smile on our faces, me and my grandma. But I guess the book was the final tribute to her. We never expected the outcomes we would have. For example, this amazing interview that I'm having the opportunity to participate. We never expected that.
What is the difference between a book towards children than towards adults when it comes to hard concepts, difficult concepts such as this?
Yeah, well, I think when I write to family members who are caring for the adults, we are talking about a lot of guilt to the table. They bring a lot of guilt to the table. Usually the family members, they blame themselves for what is happening, for not understanding, for not knowing how to react, everyday mistakes, for being frustrated all the time. It's nice to see my readers getting in touch to say how much the books have made them believe in themselves again. And that's the difference between children and adults, I guess. With adults, you have to help them going through that because someone depends on them. But for children, you have to help them to create an idea, a concept that they will carry with them for the entire life. And it's all about that. It's about understanding that there is an active role to play in this journey for both adults and children. That we don't have just to sit in an armchair and watch Alzheimer's happening in front of us. Because years ago, 15 years ago, when I discovered my grandma's diagnosis, that was actually what media was telling me. You don't have anything to do, just sit and watch. And I didn't want to do that. And
Right.
the name of my latest book, actually, which is a guide for those families facing dementia, it's about this message. Alzheimer's is not the end. And I think that families connect precisely because they are desperate for reassurance. And when they open the book, they soon read that it's okay to feel what you feel, it's okay to react the way you react. Alzheimer's is perhaps the only condition that allows us to make mistakes. And a few minutes later, the person with Alzheimer's will give another chance to you because they will forget, but you cannot forget. You have to remember your mistake and you have to make it right the next time.
Right. And that brings me to my next question, actually. And that is, what is the most common misunderstanding about dementia in your experience? And where do you see room for improvement?
Oh, the misunderstanding, dementia. I think, well, talking more about my country, I do believe that this fact that people think the signs of dementia are part of aging for everyone is so damaging for society. And well, following the same logic, talking about children, I do believe that projects like, for example, the one that I have with researchers from Chile called Dementia Friendly Schools can be very transformative for societies. We are looking for funding now to implement this project, but we believe that kids can be drivers for changing their parents' behavior in order for a better understanding of aging or the signs and symptoms of dementia, for example. We have a huge problem in Brazil with a timely diagnosis. We actually understand that something is happening and it's not the natural process of aging when they are already advancing in dementia, progressing, and it's maybe the second stage of the disease. And that's shortens a lot our time for reaction, for understanding, for saying, for example, in their behalf, what do you want to do in the future? So we need to change their concept right now.
Yeah, clearly. And in your work, have you encountered any challenges aside from trying to teach people about these common misunderstandings? when trying to teach people about these issues?
How the big challenge in my country is still the lack of resources
Mm.
and fundings for high impact projects. We have a lot of ideas, that's for sure. But that is why we are setting up, and when I say we, I'm talking about a group of geriatricians that are creating the Dementia Alliance Brazil with me, which aim to be an organization that will connect with international NGOs and associations in the search for innovation and solutions in dementia, as well as funds that can be used by local players in Brazil. But Europe, and I am sure you are aware of that, but Europe and United States have a very strong culture involving philanthropy, something
Mm.
that is not yet widespread in my country. And the lack of what high impact projects ends up perpetuating the problem. But in addition, it's difficult also to embrace those families that are receiving diagnosis today if you cannot navigate them through the available resources because they are very few. While in North America, in US, Canada, post-diagnosis services are diverse, here we still have just a few alternatives. But we're moving towards a better place, I am pretty sure, but baby steps though.
Right. Well, thank you for that answer. Very interesting. And also, what is your message to people who are afraid that their loved ones might develop dementia?
Don't live in the future. It's funny that, and that's a problem that I'm sharing with these people. But it's funny that we are so afraid that our family members will develop a disease that traps them into the past that we don't actually realize how much our own fear is trapping us in the future.
Hmm.
I experienced this. I'm still experiencing the same with my mom. I confess that I am learning to let it go, to embrace the present, but I am completely afraid of Alzheimer knocking my door again. I know that if something happens, I will be there for her. That should be enough in so many cases. But when Alzheimer's comes, your crazy, your most valuable ally, let's say, will be the smile of the present and not the fear of the future. And when those people are no longer here, like in the case of my grandma, these memories will be worth absolutely everything.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a very comforting way of seeing it. So my next question is, from what you have learned since you started your journey, what do you think or hope the future will be like for the younger generation becoming elderly?
I hope it will be possible to live in a more inclusive society where there is no shame in the vulnerabilities brought by destiny, that something that life imposes, like dementia. I hope that we can live without so many walls, but in communities that are more open and prepared to understand when it's possible to help someone next to you. Because honestly, I want to die being who I was always. I want to die connected to my identity and, if possible, with my dignity preserved by my loved ones. And that's priceless. So that's what I hope for the future. But when you think ahead and you think in a future where everything that I just said is possible, you have also to connect this possibility to the present. And how you do that, you have to bond with your family members, with your friends, with your community. You have to build this 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 thing that I call affective reserve, because thinking about brain health, we always hear about cognitive reserve, but it's so important also to create this affection for the ones that are living with you, for your family, to create this interest in someone to be on your side in the future if you need someone. And I guess, yes, it's important to think what I want for the future, but starting to act today.
Yeah, that's a very inspiring way to put it. And finally, where do you see yourself in the future?
Well, alive, first of all, hopefully.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, during a
Good
pandemic is a
plan.
very important topic, but that's a tricky one. I never imagined being where I am today. For example, here talking to you, having the privilege of creating and managing so many amazing projects, working with and being mentored by people I truly admire, like Dr. Leah Greenberg, Alexandre Kalashi here in Brazil, Ian Robertson in Ireland, having the possibility to share my expertise as part of associations that I follow today, the mission and the values. For example, the World Young Leaders in Dementia, Moriguchi Institute, Alzheimer's Association. It's just amazing to look back and see all the impact my grandma has created, not just in my life, but in other families' lives, and all the amazing path we have built together. Um, I absolutely want to go further, that's for sure. I want to dedicate my life to leverage the positive impact of my projects for these families. I want to have the opportunity to work with associations abroad. I love it. I just love it, my experience in Dublin with the Global Brain. And I hope I will be able to go to other associations and institutes overseas and stay for a while with them, learning, collecting ideas and perspectives to bring to my country and to feel more prepared to apply all this knowledge and change the future of the families living so close to me here, close to my reality as well. Maybe work with your association in the future, who knows? And I definitely want to publish my grandma's story in other countries as well. I am looking for uh, publishers all over the world, and that's probably my biggest dream, to being able to see other families in different countries sharing the same emotions that I lived with my grandma. That will be, well, everything to me.
Yeah, I'm convinced you will actually reach that goal since the book has sold so well in Brazil. And well, that's all the questions I had. And thank you for participating. And yes, thank you for all the interesting answers you gave me. And also thank you for the amazing work you are doing. So yeah, I hope we can work together sometime in the future.
Hopefully, yes.